here. Okay, I'm just going to give us a little bit of time for people to hop on and join. I'm streaming on a variety of platforms, so I can't see how many people are on right now or if there are any people on, so I'm just going to give a little more time. Okay, I'll go ahead and start. I'm Courtney Bagtazo. I work with Stateless in New York. We are an outsourced design, development, and production team working with brands across the world. We have a partnership with Makers Row. You can find our page in the pinned link. And we have recently partnered with Embark.live as well. Embark.live is an online community that connects entrepreneurs and small businesses to business category experts. I always say where Makers Row is a resource to find how to make your product, Embark.live is a resource to find professionals to support you in the other aspects of your business, such as branding, marketing, or sales. Stateless's product team can be found on Makers Row, and our branding team can be found on Embark.live. I will say I'm here in New York today, and it's another nice, beautiful day. So in my neighborhood, people are all sitting out in their stoops because we're a little cooped up. So if you hear some racket, bear with me. Today we're going to discuss the importance of professional tech packs. If you've been watching my other sessions, I've expressed the difficulty in getting from idea to reality, and the most effective way to ensure your samples come out the way you envisioned them is really through tech packs. So I'm going to go ahead and invite you guys to ask questions. I have a couple times throughout this session that I'm going to stop and ask, and then at the very end, we'll also ask more questions or answer more questions. So starting off, like, what are tech packs? So tech packs are comprised of three things. There's a detailed sketch with sewing and construction callouts. There's specs, which stands for specifications. There's measurements on how the garment should fit. And then there's BOMs, which are the bill of materials. This is like the recipe for your clothing. It outlines all of the materials that will be included in the garment. In order to prepare yourself to determine what sewing details and fit you'd like, it's helpful to just rifle through your closet, or in some cases, even go on a shopping trip. If you do not have experience in the industry, you likely don't have the language to express what you're looking for in all circumstances. But you can always point to a seam or stitch style on a garment to illustrate what you're looking for really well. Same with fit. You can even sometimes just find fit pics. The way a sleeve looks in a picture will be very helpful in communicating how you want this thing to look. So likewise, you may say, okay, I want to fit the size 4 in my brand, but in order to build specs, whose size 4 are you referring to? So it would be really good for you to go and pull a few size charts from brands that you like the fit of, and even consider purchasing a few similar items to the reference just for fit. It's completely unethical and very bad business to copy another brand's garments. I'm not saying that. Using what is out there, though, as reference is completely acceptable. So you want to make a pair of leggings, and there's a pair of leggings that fits really well. You have something that you're doing that's different than this legging that you're referencing. But in terms of where the waist is, the length of the inseam, the leg hole opening, things like that, very helpful to have a reference if you can. It's not necessary. It's also fine to just identify a couple brands that you like, because we can look at their size chart. So your technical designer or your pattern maker is going to take that information, and they're going to use it to build the specs for your brand. Now, something I want to mention is that if you take one pair of jeans from a company, and then you take a top from a different company, and you take a jacket from a different company, and those different companies, everybody has their own fit standards. So your brand's fit is not going to be consistent if you only follow other reference samples. So you do have to kind of work on defining a mean, which we'll go over more in a moment. But I just wanted to see if there was any questions. Okay, so far you guys are good. Okay, so once you've determined what styles that you want to do and what details you'd like, you need to work with a designer who can make a flat sketch. This is different than a fashion illustration, so I'm just going to quickly talk about the differences. Flat sketches are technical drawings meant to communicate design details. Fashion illustrations, which most people, I think, who haven't worked in the industry professionally assume that's what designs look like, is what these like fashion illustrations look like. Those are stylized sketches that are really just there to communicate the mood and vibe of the garment. They're not even necessary, actually, to be honest. Some people still work that way, but it's just as easy to, again, just take either garments or photographs to show like, okay, I want to drop seam like this shoulder here, find a picture of that you can put on Pinterest and say, the shirt that we're working on, I want it to have a seam like this. So basically, if in a flat sketch phase, what we want to do is we begin with front sketches and backs, and/or back sketches, depending on how clear or unclear the designer is on what they'd like their style to be. And we review that with you. I'm telling you about our process, but this is the same process that you would find if you were going to go into any fashion company, like a big fashion house. You have even if you're the designer, you have your design team, and then you have the creative director and the merchandiser that you have to get things approved with. So you would take, just before you go into major detail, you would take the flat sketch and just do the front and maybe the back and have, go over it with each other to make sure that it's approved. I see a question, what if you've never made a tech pack and aren't the best drawer but have the idea down? So that's the thing is, in a lot of the other conversations we've had here, if you can't do it, you should hire somebody to do it. Because if you don't have a tech pack, then when you go into the sampling phase, you're going to spend way more time and money, because going from idea to reality is hard. And if there's not any visual tool to communicate how you want this thing to be, it's going to take you a long time to get to a fit approved product. In terms of hiring a fit model for a sample fitting, how do I know which size, bust, waist, height, etc. to ask for? Great question, Isabel. I'm going to answer that in just a minute. So I'll pause on that question, but I will get there. So anyway, once you're in this sketch phase, you're looking at just the front and back. You talk to the team, or in the way we work at Stateless, we would talk to you, the owner and creative director of the brand. We would say, okay, this is what we understood from the visual images you gave us. So if you don't know how to draw, that's okay. A lot of creative directors aren't doing their own sketches. You gather the images and you gather reference samples to communicate what you're looking for. And then it's up to the designer to draw it out. And before they go into all of the details and pass it to the factory, you two work together to say, okay, like I said, I wanted this drop seam. It looks a little too dropped for me. Can we bring that up? And we would do it the way we work at Stateless is we do up to 3 rounds of sketch revisions before moving into what we call finishing out the sketch tech pack. And once you get the main idea approved, then you go in and you start saying, like, this is what is this? This is a French seam. Seam here, there you don't see like a big collar stitch. This has a facing. That's a little fabric. I'm just going to show you my clothes. There's a little piece of fabric with a little piece of fusing that goes here to keep this nice and clean. So then there's just an edge stitch. We call out all of those little details in the sketch tech pack. And again, that's after we've already gotten all of the little design elements approved by you. So that we can help the pattern maker and the sample makers see what we're looking for. If there is a detail that is missing in your sketch that hasn't been thought out, don't be surprised when your sample doesn't come out the way you wanted it to. If there is a detail missing, 2 things can happen. Either your pattern maker is going to assume the answer and just choose one for you, or you're going to be delayed and your process is going to be stalled because they're going to stop and ask you. And if you don't know, you're going to be like, oh, I don't know. And then they're still going to probably tell you, and it may not be what you want. So the main idea is that with a tech pack, the whole time what you're trying to do with these tech packs when you're building them is to, before passing off for the labor part of things, is to get everything really clear. So, a student level or an inexperienced designer, they may know how to use Illustrator or even hand draw and make some, beautiful sketches. But without experience, they may not know how to construct the garment. So the sketches are still often hard to work with. In the fashion industry, when a junior designer designs from, like the front and back sketches, they often work with either a senior designer, a pattern maker, or a product developer to determine the construction details. Some schools like SCAD in Philadelphia, they do teach sewing construction. So some designers come out of school more well-equipped to create tech packs, but nothing beats experience. So if you don't have the experience yourself, hire people who do, because otherwise you're going to go to your pattern maker, you're going to spend money on that sample, and it may feel like you're getting something done, but you're going to spend more time and money trying to figure out what you want instead of just doing it in the behind the scenes phase in sketches and tech pack form without wasting all this materials and resources. So again, if you are unclear from the garments and or photos, it's okay. But what would be best is to think of every single seam and every little detail and discuss it with your pattern maker. So like, even sometimes with us, there might be something, and we're a team that has, I've been doing this since 1999, and a lot of our designers have been doing this for, over a decade or more. So if you're unclear what needs to happen there, sometimes even we might say, okay, for sure we know all of this stuff, but in this situation right here, this seam, this is a new thing that we want to do. We'll go and we'll ask the pattern maker or the factory who we know can do it, and we'll ask them to tell us what to do. And they might say, well, you have these 3 options. And then we go, oh, okay, these are our 3 options. And then we talk about it. We discuss which 3 options we want. We guide the brand owner into, making the right decision and which of the 3 we decide to go with. And that's how we do it. But if you pass anything off and it's vague and they go to start working, there's 2 things that can happen. It's either going to be delayed and they're still going to make the decision for you in the end because you don't know, or they're going to assume for you and you're going to get a sample that doesn't look exactly how you wanted it to look. It may come out right, but you want to spend the time up front getting all of those details worked out in a sketch. So also, something to note is that there's a variety of seams that can be used on the same part of a garment. So if you have a look in your closet or you go on a shopping trip, you can determine what kind of inseam you want on your jeans. Otherwise, again, don't be surprised when you're referencing, like, let's say I take this shirt that I'm wearing now and I say, I like the way this fits. Please use this fit. And I don't say, oh, but what I don't like is the way there's a center back placket here. I don't like the way the buttons are going back there. Our sketch has the buttons on it. You gave us this thing. It does say for fit, but if I don't know that you don't like the way that button works, and if the factory doesn't know and the sketch has the buttons in a similar way, it's going to come out that way unless you tell us otherwise. So again, it's not just, you can't assume that, I used to work with a designer or a creative director who would always say, I just want the regular thing. I just want the regular thing. And it's like, okay, well, there's about 5 regular ways to do this. So let's talk about those 5 regular ways and figure out which regular way you mean. It's actually pretty simple. It's just it's a major rookie mistake that a lot of new brands make, not working out the visual communication tool. So I'm going to just double check. I see another question. For do-it-yourselfers, do you know of a tech pack instruction or software that you would recommend, particularly in respect to calculating, rendering multiple sizes of an item? Okay, that's a big question, Ralph. I myself am a do-it-yourselfer. That is how I got into this industry, and I very much admire the DIY ethos. But making clothes is very expensive, and it's very time consuming. And if you don't know how to do something, you would be better off hiring somebody who knows how to do it while you're learning. Because again, like I said, if you can learn how to use, I actually don't know who can teach you. There's a lot of, like in New York, I was actually, even for myself, I'm a product developer. and production manager, but I wanted to learn how to use a program. There's like several places you can go to learn how to use certain programs. There's even online courses. Trying to remember the name. It was like Angie. I'll think about it. But there are online courses that you can take to learn how to do, Illustrator is a great, that's how most people in the fashion industry work. If they don't know how to, if they don't want to hand draw, especially flat technical sketches, it's kind of a waste of time to do it by hand. So you could take a course in learning how to do Illustrator, and that will be helpful, at least for you to know, how to do it yourself. But again, if you don't know the seams and all the call outs that you need to make, and you've never seen a tech pack and you don't know what a tech pack should look like, you're going to be really far away from being able to communicate clearly by learning how to use Illustrator. So while you're learning to do that, it would save you money, even though you are a DIYer, to hire somebody who has a tech pack format that you can, later reference, that knows how to do all the call outs and stuff. I mean, there's plenty of freelancers out there, or 1 season contracts that you can do just to get your sketches done correctly. Because if you don't have anything to model off of, even if you do learn how to use Illustrator, it's not going to help you. There's so many different ways to make something. So it's going to be pretty hard for you to just take a course and then be ready to make a usable tool. We get past a lot of sketches from our clients who have gone to fashion school even, and because they have a degree in merchandising or something else, the sketch is good enough to communicate what they're asking, and we can go in and ask all those questions like, okay, well, you didn't have a bottom seam here. Do you want it to be blind hemmed? Is it supposed to be invisible? Oh, it's not? Oh, okay, what did you want there? Okay, this reference picture you have, the spaghetti straps are a lot wider than your drawing. Is that on purpose? Did you want your seams to be, your stitches to be really big like that on purpose? Or is it just because you don't know how to use the tool to, draw a nice stitch? So those kinds of questions we can ask those kinds of questions from I don't want to say a bad tech pack but from like a vague sketch. But again, our team, the way we work is we kind of protect you from the laborer who's doing the work. We make sure that you have everything done correctly, because if you had gone to your pattern maker, they might not have asked all those questions. They might have just assumed. So unless you know to stop and say, hey, I didn't call out a bottom hem here. Hey, I didn't call out this closure. One time a lady, it was a long time ago when I was very new in the industry, she wanted to make a silk shirt, a woven silk shirt with a really small neck hole. And, her drawing she passed me didn't have like a keyhole and a button to get into it. And I said, listen, you're going to need something to get into this. This is a woven and you're not going to be able to put it over your head. And she was pretty flippant. She said, I didn't make my millions following the rules. I don't want that. I want it to be like this. And, after arguing with her for a little while, trying to reason with her, we decided on our team if the pattern maker just made the sample so she could see that she couldn't get her head in. It was a big waste of time and money, and we did it in nice silk. So you want to work with somebody who knows what they're doing at least a little bit. I don't mean that they know a little bit. I mean, you want to work with them at least a little bit to get the communication tools clear. Okay, so I'm now going to talk about specs. I'm going to answer Isabel's question in this portion. So once your detailed sketches are complete, the specs are built by a technical designer. Some designers know how to build specs and some do not. These are two different skill sets. So if you did find somebody who is able to, do your flat sketches, they may not be able to also do your specs, or even if they say they can, they might make specs that are a little wonky because so specs are based off of a specific size standard, and the most professional and effective way to build specs is to reference a few brands like I mentioned, and then you find a fit model who fits those measurements of your sample. In 2020, it's kind of arbitrary. A size 4 could mean so many things. So you want to find something that when you think of yourself and your customer and you say, okay, I'm a size 6, but who am I a size 6 in? Because there's some brands where I'm a size 4. There's some brands where I'm a size 8. Etc. So you want to try to narrow down a couple brands just to look at their size chart so that you can then determine, okay, you reach out to a fit agency and you say, okay, we're looking for a female fit model who has this hip, this waist, this bust. So that's really your first step. And the important thing about your sample size is that sample sizes are not arbitrarily determined. They need to be in the middle of your size range. So if you offer a very large size range, say straight sizing and plus sizing, you will need 2 different fit models. If you do, I'm going to just talk about women's wear, but this is applicable to menswear too. And also in kids wear especially. If you do sizes 0 through 10 or 12 in straight sizing for women, and then you also want to go all the way up to like size 32 in plus sizing, you need 2 fit models, because the math for those are not going to sync up from a straight size all the way up to size 32. And in the same way, if you just want to do, say, between sizes extra small to extra large, a size small fit model for a women's wear is best, and a size medium fit model for menswear is best. But let's say we worked with an athletic brand, and she wanted to cater towards women who had like more curves, not a plus size brand, but just women like more real bodies. So instead of choosing a size 4 or small, we chose a 6 or medium. And that was so that wherever you go with your sample size, that's going to be the true north for all of the rest of the sizes that you make. So when you sample, you only sample in one size. So to answer a little question from Ralph also is you don't do all the sizes at once. Your sketches don't have anything to do with your size range. Your sketches are for the design, and your specs are for making your samples. And then after your sample is fit approved, then you go in and grade all of your rest of your sizes. And what mean you decide to use, what sample size you decide to use, determines whether or not your size runs your line runs true to size, or if you run big. Some brands want to run big. Some brands want to run small. So you would choose, okay, we can go with an extra small female fit model. Menswear brands that work a lot with the Japanese market, we sample in a size small. Menswear brands that work with the men's US market, you sample in a size medium. If you're catering to like a burly man type, you sample in a size large. It's so that even if your guy in that burly man brand is a size small, he's probably, he's more, I don't know what the word is, but he's got more going on in his body than, a Ralph Lauren size small, for example, in menswear. I'm just going to double check. I see questions. What about hiring 2 fit models? 5'7", 157 for average or taller girls and 153 for petites. So that is also the case with, if you want to do, like jeans brands often do this, if you want to do 2 inseams, yes, you want to try to do 2 fit models. Now, if you want to make sure that your brand fits a 5'7" female and also that same size body but a 5'2" female, you can do that as well. But everybody's bodies are different, and the more you play with different fit models during your fit session, the more challenging it's going to be. You really want to try to use, even though that person, like fit models are not like supermodels, they don't have like unrealistic body types. They should be, representative of the mean. You're really looking for that middle point in your size range. So unless those 2 people, those 2 fit models have relatively the exact same bust, waist, and hip, and it's really just about height, you don't really want to check that until the end. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. So back to your sample size. Especially now in 2020, again, we can all be anyone. We can be whoever we want. We don't have to, like, I've never owned a restaurant. I'm not a chef. I could start a restaurant if I wanted. You may not. You can start a fashion line. But there's certain rules, even though it's no rules time anymore, there's certain rules that you have to abide by, one of which is choosing the mean in your size range. If you decide, like in a plus size brand, if you decide instead of say a size 16 or 18 that you want to make your fit model be a size 30, your whole line is going to run big because you used the higher end of the range, if that makes sense. So it's not an arbitrary decision, and it's not about you, it's about the range. So you need to know, you need to identify what sizes you want to offer right from the get-go. So, okay. Let me just see. So as I mentioned, we only fit in one sample size during development, and then you do grading and other sizes after the garment is fit approved. If you would like to check the grade, you need to run what we call a jump size set, or JSS, which needs to be built into your timeline from the beginning, as you will go through your standard proto, second fit, and PP sample fittings. And then once everything is fit approved, you can proceed with your salesman sample set and your jump size set. If anything fits differently than you would like it to in your jump size set, you will have to regrade, but it's better than having production that doesn't fit. So most brands really don't do jump size sets unless they're really big companies who have a lot of corporate funding, or kids companies. We almost always do jump size sets. Again, that's because especially if you offer from like toddlers to 10-year-olds, you're working usually with 2 or 3 fit models, and to just link up, it's math. When we're working on a grade rule, we're looking at the measurements of the sample, and if you have several sample sizes, you're looking at those and you're trying to decide how you're going to make it jump to the next size properly. And it's got to be formulaic. You can't be like, okay, well, we want to get from this size to this size and it's 14 inches, so we're just going to divide by 4 to get it in between. It's not like that. You really have to customize the grade rule when you're working with several sample sizes. So you really got to do that with kids brands. Another time you would do it with a jump size set is if you're offering a large size range again. I'm just going to look. Let's see. So more questions here. Would you recommend a full service company that provides a technical designer to do tech pack pattern maker production of the garment? Or what are the pros and cons of finding these services separately? If done separately, who is the liaison between the vendors to explain and answer questions? Is it more costly to have a separate vendors versus full vertical production house? Okay, great question. Very good question, Joanne. At Stateless, the reason that the founders started this brand was because, Suad is the creative director and she's a designer by trade, and she was working freelance for companies, and she was pulling together teams basically, because you don't just need a designer, you need a product developer, you need the tech designer, etc. So that's how Stateless started. So our team, who we have in-house, is kind of like if you worked in a fashion house, that would be like your design side. So you have your director, your design director, which is Suad, and then you have your product developers and your production managers. That's my team, and then you have your designers and your technical designers. That's Jess's team, and we outsource the labor, which includes patterns. We have made patterns in the past, but it's different because different pattern makers have different skill sets, and to be able to have the wide range, like designers and product developers tend to be able to have a wider range than the labor side of things. So we keep that separate. Now on a factory side, there's a similar thing. You can go to a place, we work with a factory here in New York, who their pattern maker is in-house, their sample maker is in-house, their production's in-house, their grading and marking is in-house. So they're a one-stop shop. Excellent service, amazing. It's really cool to work that way. In my past, I never worked that way until way later in life. I always worked with everybody being piecemeal. And as a person who's a product developer and the production manager, to answer your question, who managed that? I did. And I also always worked in my past, in the beginning, with small companies like the people that we do find here on Makers Row, startup, individuals who are starting a brand. And I was also pulling together teams and managing everybody in that same way. And it's a lot to know how to manage that. So it's a lot to take on. That's basically what it was out of scope from what I agreed to do for the brand. But because somebody has to do it, I took it on. And that's, again, why Stateless started. So that's a hard question. You can just hire but the thing is you might be able to hire a designer and they're like, I have a friend who's a tech designer and I work with them really well. And, you have to watch out though, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to overwork somebody or overstep any one of your freelancers or contractors, agreements. They might do it for you as a favor. And the next thing you know, they're doing it all the time. And now they're kind of resentful towards you. So I would recommend hiring a team like us. Obviously, I'm partial to that. I work that way. I used to work independently, and I prefer, even as the person in the working world, on the working side, to work this way because it's much more organized. It's much more aligned. We get things done a lot faster. Usually when the more people you have to manage, the more time it takes. I'm sorry, my little puppy's crying. I'm just going to grab her real quick. Hey, baby, come here. Come on. Okay. So on the factory side, though, when you work, there's some places that there's reasons to work full package and there's reasons to go piecemeal, and it just depends on your project. I can't say so much in detail about why that is without seeing what you're working on. But for example, price point dictates a lot. In New York, it's really expensive to get things made. So working with a New York factory who handles everything, yeah, great. But you're going to have to make your jacket be $500. If you want to make a competitive piece, but still make it in the US, we might go and work in LA. And most of those factories, unless they're really big and have huge minimum order quantities, we have to work piecemeal. There's marking and grading is separate. Cutting house is separate. Your pattern maker is separate. Your sewers are separate. Sometimes your sample maker is even separate. You send things to a finishing house, a dye house, a wash house. So it's a lot to manage, and it really is mostly dictated off of your price point and how many pieces you want to make. So in LA, there are amazing factories that do full package service. In the knit sector, it's usually a 300 piece MOQ per style per color. So that means if you want to do a sweatsuit, those are 2 styles, and you want to do it in 6 colors, you got to do 300 of each color. It's not like 300 across the 6 colors, it's 300 of each color. So they'll be able to give you that full service that is so key and such an amazing luxury to have. But it's pretty rare made in US in particular for you to have a full package factory for anything less than 300 units. Denim is even more. Usually it's like 500 pieces per style per color. Okay, I'm going to review more questions. In my experience with retail, buying the sample size is usually one above the smallest size, i.e., if that brand starts with small, the sample is medium, or if this sizing starts at extra small, the sample is small, rather than being in the middle of the size range. Is this different from doing a sample for production? So you're right. Just because I said the mean, it does not mean that it's actually literally in the middle. So, but what you want to do is, the reason you go, if you offer extra small through large, you can use a size small. You should not use a size medium for women's wear. If you offer small through large in men's wear, you should use a medium. If you offer in women's wear extra small through extra large, you should not use an extra small. You should probably use either a small or a medium, depending on if you want to run looser or more true to size. More true to size would be a small, because the math going up to a large from a small makes sense, and you can still achieve a true size large from a small. If you did small through large in women's wear, and you did your sample size as a medium, your small and your extra small are going to run big. So I don't mean to say the mean the way, like if you like on an SAT test where you have all the numbers and it's right in the middle. I don't mean it that way. I mean the mean for the math. Great. So next question, is there a site or sites where freelance tech pack makers offer their services with their qualifications and samples of the previous work? Makers Row. Makers Row is an amazing resource for that. Start there. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to go on. I don't want to go too long. I'm supposed to keep it at 20 and I always go over. Let's see. Again, I just want to mention, if you take garments from a bunch of different brands and that you like and you use them for your fit, your line, you take them, look at them against a fit model, and you decide what your brand's fit is going to be. So, okay. While specs are being built, sourcing should also be happening. And if it didn't happen before the sketches were complete, sometimes you can say like, I'm going to do beach wear. So if you're doing swimsuits and cover-ups, there's only so many fabrics I'm going to be able to start sourcing for you as a product developer. But you may say, but I want some cottony cover-ups. And there might be some sourcing I can start with. And then when I see the line, I say, oh, I did not know you wanted, French dots or something. I need to go find a little more fabric. So while specs are being built, if some initial sourcing hasn't happened, that's when the rest of the sourcing does start to happen. Sometimes you need to see the completed sketch to determine all of the materials that you need on the garment. So it's totally normal to source after initial sketches are approved. But the full sketch tech pack, before it's completed, that's kind of when it's fine to do some sourcing. So once fabrics and materials are approved, that's when the BOM is built. I don't know if you guys can hear, there's some kind of fire alarm. It's New York, sorry. So once the sketches are approved and you assign all of the fabrics to the different parts of the sketch, that's when you build the BOMs. The BOMs need to have the following information: placement of the fabric or material, the vendor name, the item number of that item, description of the item, and a color number. Those are the very, very least amount of details. You also want to keep in mind, you need to decide or need to log the fabric width. So this shirt, this is a brand I used to work with. This is a coupe row. It was 44 inches wide. That's very narrow. If you look at a roll of fabric standing up, it's 44 inches wide. It's super, super short. Most fabrics come at about 56 to even 60 inches wide. So if I use this same pattern on the coupe row that's 44 inches, and then I decide to go use a cotton poplin that's 60 inches, my yields are going to be different. So you need to keep in mind your fabric width. You need to put it somewhere, and it's great to put in your BOM. And with regards to yields, you can also put a place in your bill of materials for the yields. In your fabrics, you're not going to be able to just say how many yards something takes until after you work with your pattern maker. They're going to tell you your yields. But for things like if I'm making a hoodie, a zip-up hoodie, and it's got a center front zipper, that yield is 1. But it's got hand pocket zippers, that yield is 2 because there's 2 pockets. If there was a back zipper back here, that's another item on your BOM list, and that needs to have the number 1 in the yield, etc. Same thing for button count, anything like that. The yield column is very important, and your sketch needs to have the right count of buttons, and so that it informs your bill of materials. So you can source while the sketches and stuff are being made, but you really can't build out your bill of materials until all of the details are fleshed out, because there's going to be, oh, you didn't tell me there was going to be a draw cord on this hoodie. When I looked at the earlier, your reference pictures, none of them had draw cords, so if your sketch has a draw cord, now I go and I add that. Oh, I can't tell. And sometimes this also happens with teamwork, which is why it's so important to have a cohesive team, in my opinion, is I might look at someone's sketch and we're humans. So they make a sketch and it doesn't have a call out about the draw cord exit. Is it a buttonhole or is it an eyelet? It looks to me like a buttonhole, but I need to ask the designer, and she's going to say, oh, actually, I'm sorry. They said that they wanted an eyelet. You're right, because we have the cord tips. So the designer updates the sketch. I add that into the bill of materials. The bill of materials is your recipe for making the clothing. It has all of the items in it and tells you what to buy, so that you can, when you're going to the factory, you can use that. You can swatch your fabrics. You can swatch a little piece of each. This is the eyelet we're going to use. This is the patch we're putting on it. And it has everything listed out for you. So again, once you make your samples, that's when you'll get your yield. So make sure to keep a space in your bill of materials for a fabric yield. And you will input that, because that determines how much you need to order in production. You can also put notes like cost and MOQ in the bill of materials if you'd like. And one thing I also want to mention is that you need style numbers and working style names prior to proceeding with your tech packs, and each document will have those style numbers and names on them. I'm going to look at questions before I go into style names and style numbers. Let's see. Relating to Michelle's question, is there that this? Yeah. Obviously bust is more important to consider in swim than it is for even just regular women's wear. But the way you build specs is, the simple rule of thumb is if you're offering straight sizing, you usually fit a size small. Unless you want it to run roomy, then you fit with a size medium. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to get this puppy. Hey, come here. Stop your barking. Come here. Okay. Excuse me. Okay. So you have your size small is basically what you want to do for any women's straight sizing, unless you want your size your line to run a little roomier, then you can go up to a medium. When you do plus size, you usually want to fit a size 18. Those are your gold standards. Okay, so back to style numbers. When you want to create style numbers, the best way to do that is to keep a spreadsheet with the consecutive numbers listed and the assigned style names next to them. Sometimes you don't have your like customer facing style names worked out. So you just put like loose shirt, you know, and then it becomes the Camilla shirt later. So you want to have a document that has those numbers in them so that you can easily reference what your next style number needs to be. Sorry, this is so bad. Excuse me. I don't know why she's doing this. Come here. Hey, come here. Come here. Okay, so back to style numbers. My preferred way to make style numbers is by category. So for example, you do 1,000 for tops, 2,000s for bottoms, 3,000s for dresses and jumpsuits, 4,000s for outerwear, 5,000s for swim, etc. That way, when you look at a style number, you know what it's saying. You can see if it says SS21 1003. I know that means this was from spring summer 21 and it's a top. And you know, if you make that top over and over again every season, you might be fall winter 20, SS21 in the front, but the 1003 number is there. Your style number should match what your pattern says, what your tech packs say, and what your marker says. Your marker, I worked at a brand once where for whatever wild, crazy reason, there would be a jacket that we've made 1 million times. One marker would be style number, I'm going to make it up, 3005. The next season, it would be called 5003. And I'm like, it's the same jacket. How am I going to find this marker? Sometimes the marker would be a different number than the pattern, would be a different number than the sketch, would be a different number than that we put on the SKU sticker in production. It was madness. It was so hard and so many mistakes were made. So you keep a spreadsheet with your style numbers. You use those on your tech packs. You make sure that your pattern maker puts those on there. You make sure that when the patterns are passed to your marking and grading company, that those are the same style numbers that they use. And then when you make your SKU stickers for your order, you also put that style number on your SKU stickers. Okay, so almost done here. So anytime you run the exact same style, it can be in a different fabric the next season. Like I was saying, this was Cupro one time, and then we did a 60-inch poplin the next season. You can use the exact same style number. If there are any changes at all to the actual pattern, then it should have a different style number. Even though, let's say this was Cupro that I had to garment dye. You'd have to put some shrinkage into the pattern. You can have a shrinkage pattern for this style, but it needs to be like, instead of just 1003, it needs to be like 1003 with a 2.5 by 0 shrinkage. And I would actually call it 1003 Cupro, because then you know that this is for the Cupro shirt. Whereas when you make it in poplin, it already comes in one color. It doesn't need to have shrinkage in it, but it is still considered style number 1003, right? But if I do this same version, but I make it long or short or something, it can't just be like 1003L. Like, it should be its own style number. In my personal preference, the best thing to do is to always have the same amount of digits in all of your style numbers, so that when you're running Excel formulas or Google Sheet formulas, it just makes things cleaner when there's always a fixed amount of digits. So you don't want to do stuff like -L, -S. In your marker making facility, they can have something like 1003 Cupro, and you can keep a note in your style number document that says, okay, in 1003, we have 1003 Cupro, which has a 2.5 by 2.5 shrinkage. We also have 1000. We also just have our regular old 1003 that works for anything that's already pre-dyed and doesn't need to be washed with shrinkage. So let's see. Okay, I'm going to go back to your questions. Okay, actually no questions. Great. So last thing. So once you've completed all 3 of these steps, you're ready to pass off to your pattern maker or your factory. Again, any detail that hasn't been called out will either be assumed by your pattern maker or will delay your process because the factory is going to stop and ask you. If you do not have a clear vision, your samples will not come out as you expect, obviously. So you should not proceed with samples until your vision is fleshed out and clearly expressed in tech packs. So I talked about this before. I'm going to briefly mention it again. You should not be addressing design in fittings. By the time you're seeing your samples, your designs should be clear. And the way that they've been made clear is in your tech packs. Sometimes you address design because it's not fitting right. And you're like, okay, you know what, this neckline, for me, this shirt I'm wearing it backwards on purpose. So like these shoulders seam forward. If I was the designer, I would have put it right in the center so that, because she said we could wear it forwards or backwards, since she intended it for be forwards and backwards, I would have personally put the shoulder seam right here. That kind of detail can be addressed in your fitting, but the design of the product should not be addressed in the fitting. It should be really fleshed out before you pass, because otherwise you're going to be making samples and samples and samples and using a lot of resources. And the Earth's resources, shipping, fabric, all this stuff, plus then people's time and your money making stuff. And then you have a sample that you can't even use. It's just going to go in the garbage one day. Anyway, so let's see. Are there any further questions? I'm going to go back and look because I feel like I breezed over one question. 1 second, and then we'll wrap it up. Okay, great. No, that's it. Okay, so thank you guys so much. Sorry about the dog. I don't know why she's being so needy. We're here at home and this is reality. So you can find Stateless on Makers Row in the pinned link that I have there, and make sure to sign up for Embark.live as well. Oh, let's see. There's a question that just came through. Do you have a whole? Thank you. Do you have to do a whole new tech pack if you change fabrics? Good question. No, you do not. You would change your BOM. So your BOMs, let's say this 1003 shirt, we have this in Cupro. This one needs to be dyed. How we build BOMs is we do it in a Excel or Google sheet, and I just do separate tabs at the bottom. So it would be like, here's the Cupro BOM. On the next page, we've got a striped fabric. The stripe needs to be cut specially. I'm going to make a separate BOM. Anytime it's the same exact pattern, it can have the same tech pack and style number and everything. But if you change fabrics and just the fabrics, then you can have just an updated bill of materials. Okay, yeah, that's it. But I do want to say about that, if you change any fit at all, I would give it another style number, even if to your customer, it ends up being what did I call this? The Lulu shirt or whatever. If it's the same shirt to the customer, if you change spec at all, so you could have the same sketch. So a part of your tech pack would be your bill of material and your spec would be updated. And you would do something like, calling it the Cupro version, the denim version. Again, at the end of the day, it's going to be the same customer facing thing. So it's a little bit of a gray area, but I would most definitely always update your style number so that you never accidentally take a marker, like you write to your marker maker and you say, okay, we're going to reprint style number 1003, but you meant 1003. It's the Lulu shirt, but with, I don't know, the specs have changed, you might accidentally cut the wrong thing if you don't make everything really distinct with its own style number and its own set of tech packs. All right, so that's it. Thank you guys so very much. This has been really fun, and I'll see you next time.